Well, good day, everyone. Welcome to our third Friday noon coffee chat with Gallo Company. You have myself, John Gallo, and Eric Ma to my right. Good afternoon. It's sunny here in Edmonton. Hopefully it's sunny wherever you are. Eric, so what are we talking about today?
So today we're diving really deep into the CEWS, the Canada Employment Wage Subsidy. There's a couple things that we're going to be diving right into, starting with the legal ramifications of this benefit. Do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a week where we show you that we're truly accountants. Is this being recorded?
Yes, we are recording.
Okay. That we're gonna actually pull up some spreadsheets and we're gonna get very detailed into the CEWS, the Canadian Emergency Wage Subsidy. It's probably the most important thing. It comes out next week. Applications start on the 27th, Monday. They will process them May 4th, and we believe you might be able to get your funds as early as May 10th to 15th. But before we go into our example on the wage subsidy, there are a few things I think people are still asking questions about. One of the most important things is that the wage subsidy is very significant in terms of potential funds to a company. So there's some legal ramifications. I think it's very important to note, Eric, that it should be the CFO, the CEO, or the owner of the company, or someone they really trust to actually do the calculations and fill out, because they will be held personally responsible if there's a mistake or if it's not done properly. So it's something that, though there's a great benefit, there's also, I guess, a great responsibility to get it right. So I think that's really important to note. There's also some other things that when you sign off on the CEWS, the wage subsidy, it's going to say you're willing to just have your name made public as an example of a great employer who's keeping people employed and taking the government program. So if you're a shy company and you don't want this to be known that you've seen a decrease in revenues, that's something to consider. I personally don't think that's going to be a big issue. I think there is no reputational damage to admit that revenues are down and you need help keeping the doors open. So I think that's not much of an issue. Second is, it's really important before you even go through the calculations to make sure you qualify. We're not going to talk about the criteria to qualify that much today. If we have time at the end, we will. We're going to assume you do qualify, and we're going to run through an example with different types of employees. Because that's where all the questions are coming. But as a reminder, there's a couple of criteria. What are the criteria again?
Yeah, definitely. So your wage has to, your revenue has to drop 15% in March, 30% in April and May, in comparison to either two different methodologies. A would be to compare to the 2019 year of the same month, or B, a average of January and February of 2020 compared to your, prospective month, being either March, April, or May. On top of that as well, it's important to note that, sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Cash or accrual.
Yes, cash or accrual. Yeah.
So there's about 6 different permutations to make sure you're qualified. Assuming you're qualified, we'll get into the example. And the last question people have been asking us about the qualification is, if you qualify in 1 month, do you have to fill out the forms and do the calculations for the subsequent month?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So if you actually qualify for, let's say, March, you qualify for March and April. If you qualify for April, you qualify for April and May. So you always qualify for the subsequent month.
Okay. So if you qualify for March, and April. Do you still have to then run the qualifications for May to see if it works for you?
That's a good question. If you qualify for March, you qualify for March and April. You do have to run the calculation again for May.
Okay. Great. I think if we got all that stuff clear, we're going to share our screen with you. So we're going to try something different. We've practiced a little bit, so hopefully it works well. And we're going to, Eric's going to run you through an example and get deep into the numbers. So over to you, Eric.
All right. So.
Oh, sorry. And one last thing. I'm going to be monitoring the chat box. So if you have any questions, please write in chat, and then I'll ask them to Eric, and Eric will be able to respond to them. So we are going to get very technical and detailed into the different types of employees using the application formats. So please ask the questions, and we'll make sure that we answer them today.
Perfect. Okay, sorry. Let me just get a little bit organized here. All right. So we should be able to see our screen. What I'm going to first do is, so the example we're going to be using today, everyone's situation is going to be a little bit different. You guys all have different, methodologies of getting all your payroll numbers and such. I've narrowed it down to a very simple example using 3 employees. We have 1 employee making $60,000 on my Excel here. We have 1 employee making $60,000 in salary. We have another employee making $30,000. And then we have a last employee here who is on an hourly wage. The reason we use this example is just to show kind of the difference between somebody who would make over the eligible limit, under the eligible limit, and somebody who would not be paid the same remuneration week to week.
So what we're trying to do here, I believe, Eric, is provide different companies with different payrolls, different options, or show them how they would fill it out for hourly, people under the threshold, people over the threshold.
That's right, exactly. So I'm going to start by walking you guys through exactly how we can get all the spreadsheets that are necessary. So this is just going to be used for the data that we're going to be entered into. Again, yours is going to be different when you where you collect your payroll information. So don't mind that part if this part doesn't look the way your payroll stuff looks.
So this is coming from either Ceridian, it's coming from your QuickBooks, or an ADP, or even the back of a napkin, however you calculate your employees' wages. Is that correct?
That's right, exactly, yeah. So the first thing that we want to do is where we're starting out, we need to get all of the spreadsheets that we're going to need in order to do our calculation. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're assuming that you qualify. So this part, we're going past whether or not you qualify for the subsidy, and we're diving right into how to determine what that subsidy amount is. So what I've done here on my Internet Explorer is I've just gone and I've brought us to the COVID-19 page on our website.
That's at galloandco.ca.
That's right, yeah, right at the top here. And we can go there with the COVID-19, and that'll take you here. So what we want to do from this page is near about halfway through, we see this spreadsheet here. It says Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy Worksheet. Now this spreadsheet, you have to excuse this is our internal security. So when you go to that page, it's going to download in the bottom of your browser, or however you download it. In your downloads, you'll find this spreadsheet. So I'm going to go ahead and open up that spreadsheet.
So all of you should have access to this spreadsheet or spreadsheets similar to it.
Let's go to...
There we go. So this is, if you download our spreadsheet, this is what it should look like.
So this is your spreadsheet. There's a couple things in here. It's very daunting at first, but I assure you it's simple once you kind of understand what's going on. So this spreadsheet, if at any point, like when you're doing this on your own, you're not following through or you're not following what you need to do next. This spreadsheet is very nice in that there's this little orange button here that'll always take you to where you need to. If you click it, will take you where you need to go next. So here it's going to say, what is my qualifying, who is the entity we're looking at? Let me just enable my editing here. So it says qualifying entity. So in this case, we just need to enter in what the company name is. So we'll just put a name in. All right. And then the next thing here is you'll notice that this has changed. It's going to say enter the employee names or ID. So this is where we're going to need to go back to our payroll detail. I mean, you guys will know your employees, so it'll be very easy for you to put all these in. But you're going to want to put in one for every one of your employees that you're looking at obtaining the subsidy for. So in our case, we only have...
So say that again, Eric. For every employee you have to enter them into this spreadsheet or a spreadsheet like this.
That's right, exactly. So every single one of them, because their eligible remuneration for the subsidy is going to be different based on what their pre-COVID amount was, what their current wage is, et cetera, et cetera. And all of these things are important, and this spreadsheet will help guide you as to what their eligible amount is. So again, you will need to put one line for every employee that you're looking at using the subsidy on.
Okay, well, let's run through it.
All right.
Let's call employee 1 Joey. I've always wanted to have a Joey.
So employee number 1 is Joey. On the left-hand side, we see employee number 1. I'll just do this so that everything, I'll do this.
Okay, so let's enter Joey's.
All right, so the employee deals at arm's length with the qualifying entity. So we're going to say that is true. That is to say that this employee is
the owner. Let's call him the owner.
If he's the owner, then it would be false.
Okay.
If he is the owner, there. So it's false because he does not deal at arm's length with the corporation. Joey is the owner, so he does not deal at arm's length, and this affects the calculation. It reduces the numbers that you can use. So in this case, the next thing that we need to do is, as you can see in the orange box here, we need to put in the eligible remuneration. The eligible remuneration between January 1 and March 15th is the baseline, as you can see right here. The baseline allows you to calculate what the average pre-COVID salary or wage was, eligible remuneration was. So in this case, back on my spreadsheet, you'll calculate yours, by pulling the detail between January 1 and March 15th.
So there's some searching that you have to do on your own in terms of determining how much in this case, Joey, or the owner of the company, got paid for those essentially 10 weeks.
Exactly. So I've taken the liberty of figuring that out on my own with my imaginary company. But employee number 1, or Joey, had a baseline salary prior to COVID of $12,357.69. So that's what I'm going to enter in there. So then Joey's average baseline remuneration is $1,153.38. So this orange box is asking you to basically prompt whether or not you believe this average number of weeks is correct. The reason they say that is because 10.71 weeks implies that the employee was working the whole time.
Okay, so if you hired someone halfway through, it's not 10.71.
That's right. Exactly.
But we'll assume for any employee you had starting the calendar year, it's 10.71.
That's right. Exactly.
Okay.
So in this case, it's asking us to put something here, which we're going to put an O to say that's correct. So now you can see as the color shifts through, we're going to go to the next column. This next column asks us to put in what the wage was from March 15th to March 21st.
So the amount they actually got paid.
That's right. Exactly.
Perfectly. Okay.
So again, this will take, for some of you will have to do some, some math and some calculation and searching to find out what the exact weekly amount is. So in this case, for employee number 1, as we can see in my sheet here, his weekly would have been $1,000. Since he's on salary, he would have been $1,153.85 for the 1 week. So then it's going to ask if the employee was on leave with pay. That's for the whatever situation you have. But in this case, we're going to say he was not on leave. So we're going to put false. So then it's going to ask you to put in the employer's portion of EI and CPP, which is, again, something that you will have to calculate yourself. But for our example, we can see on mine that his CPP and EI was $60.58 for CPP, and then EI was $25.52.
Once again, we're recording this, so you can always watch us on our YouTube channel to see how it's done.
So this may not work for every single person, but because I know that this is going to be consistent for the entire period for Joey only, I know that Joey's going to work every week. Joey hasn't taken any time off, and nothing's going to change about his remittance each week. I can actually copy the section as I did here. I copied the section related to March 15th to 21st, and I can paste it for every week up until the end of this reporting period. So I can paste it into here, and it's going to agree. But this is because I know that Joey's does not change for the week to week. If yours does change, this will not work as you would if it was an hourly who doesn't make the same amount every week. So Joey's is pretty straightforward. That's pretty easy.
So Joey is the owner. He's the salaried individual. Mm-hmm. It's someone who doesn't change, and their wage was in excess of the maximum amount of $847.
Yeah. And on top of that, Joey did earn a wage prior to COVID.
That's right.
That's very important because in order to qualify for the benefit, it is important for non-arm's length employees to have earned income during the baseline period. The baseline period being January 1st to March 15th. Basically, the reason is CRA is saying you had to have been an employee before COVID because then it's reasonable to expect that you should get the subsidy.
Absolutely.
So that's all good. The next person we have is employee number 2. Let's go with, so let's say employee number 2 is true. They are an eligible employee. They are dealing at arm's length. So the reason that this changes is because an eligible employee or an arm's length employee does not have to have had pre-COVID wages.
Oh, okay. So you can hire. So a lot of questions we get is, if I hire someone new, do we get the wage subsidy? And of course, the answer is yes.
Exactly.
If you hire someone new, you will get the wage subsidy for them.
Yes, exactly. Now, let's say Joey had a son. Joey has a son, and he hires him after COVID-19. Because Joey's son is a non-arm's length employee because he's in Joey's immediate family, he would not qualify, and so he could not get the 75%.
Because the baseline remuneration wasn't there.
That's
okay.
Right.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. So but in this case, we're saying employee number 2, who we'll say is Bob, is an arm's length employee. So Bob is eligible for this employee number 2. Bob is going to earn a weekly wage, his baseline down here is $6,178.85. So that gets him a baseline average of $576. Sorry. This is going to be very straightforward for these two because their average is going to work out to be what their weekly is anyway because they're on salary for the most part. It shouldn't change too much. Obviously, barring specific circumstances, but that's pretty straightforward. So the same thing is with Joey. We're going to enter in the same information. We see he earns a weekly wage of $576 here. So his eligible remuneration is $576.92. And then he was not on paid leave. And he has his CPP and EI, which we're going to put in.
Now, if you use a payroll provider like a Ceridian or even the CRA payroll calculator, you can get these numbers, but you do need to have these numbers.
Yes. There's lots of ways to, there's lots of ways to get all these numbers. It's however you find it best for your situation. But like John said, you do need them. So again, with Bob, we know that Bob's weekly is going to be the same. So I can do the same thing. Bob is not earning a different wage per week. So it is okay. Like with some spreadsheets, you wouldn't be able to copy and paste, but in this case, it is okay to copy and paste just like this. Okay. So the last one is going to be employee number 3, which is an hourly wage employee. And we're going to say the number 3, we'll call him Dane. So Dane we'll say is an eligible arm's length employee. And Dane actually earns a hourly salary. Now this is the one that's going to be the most important for you to break it down to the week because it does change. And his baseline remuneration is important as well. You'll find more, I guess, areas of concern in this one, in an hourly waged employee, because they don't always work a full week.
Okay. Absolutely, yeah.
And so you only want to calculate weeks where they actually worked. That like they shouldn't be penalized essentially for weeks where they didn't work. So this number can actually be changed. I'm not going to change it. But if you say that they only worked for 5 weeks from January 1st to March 15th, this number should be changed to 5 weeks.
Okay.
So, and that's okay to change it here. It's just a reminder to change it. So in this case, we'll leave it like that. And we're saying that Dane, employer number 3, had a baseline of $5,000 over the 10 weeks.
I just want to remind everyone, if you have questions, please ask them on the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Dane's is different. We need to break it down by the week. So you can see here, I have it broken into each week. I used some random hours at $15, and I got how much he was going to earn each week.
So this is a great example of retail or an office where maybe you have some assistants that don't come in every day. They come in when it's busy. For example, a real estate agency where you're going to bring a conveyancer in only when there's files to convey, or maybe you have a physio or a chiropractor shop, and you're going to bring them in the days that they're needed, or maybe do billings twice a week or something like that. So this is an example for the hourly employee where it's going to change every week based on need.
Exactly. So again, it's pretty straightforward once we're in it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pull the eligible remuneration here. So $525 in week 1, as we can see in this column. And that is, they were not on paid leave, so false again. And then we're going to put in the EI CPP for the employer. The reason that they're asking for this, I guess I haven't touched on that. The reason that this spreadsheet asks for what the employer's CPP and EI are is because if you type yes in this column, you're saying that they were on paid leave. And CRA or the government has allowed for a 100% refund if an employee was on paid leave, but was still being paid.
So that's the furlonged employee.
Exactly.
So basically, I think while Eric punches in the EI, what they're saying is that if you furlonged employees and you're paying them and they're not coming to work, CRA will pay their CPP and EI as an incentive to pay furlonged employees.
Okay, so just with this, I'm just going to go ahead and type through all of the items. So once I've done all this, it's going to spit out a number at the top, which is what we're about to get into.
A lot of work here, particularly if you have 20, 25 employees, and of course, we're just filling out the first tab of this sheet for the first pay period of March 15th to April 11th. This will have to be filled out again for the next 2 subsequent pay periods. Even if you do qualify, you still have to fill it out because your numbers may change, particularly if you have hourly employees or you let go of someone, or you brought someone back off of leave or layoff. So you do have to fill out this worksheet even if you qualify, because you need to know the number for that period, the qualification period.
Exactly. So I've entered in all the information. It's all good to go. The last thing is we're assuming that these are all the employees. So we've got all the employees entered in. I'm going to maximize this window now so you can see. In the beginning, at the very top of this spreadsheet, it provides for you a summary in this box right here. This box summarizes for the qualifying period what your net subsidy should be. Now, there's one important bit that you need to include as well, is the 10% wage subsidy claimed. You need to enter that into this column for things to work properly on this spreadsheet. And it has to be a negative number. So for example, if in your first qualifying period, March 15th to April 11th, mm-hmm. you had a 10% wage subsidy of, let's say it was $900. Now you'll have this number because we have the other spreadsheet that calculates that.
That's right. And remember that 10% wage subsidy was something you applied for a few weeks ago when you submitted your first payroll. And if you were using a Ceridian or an ADP, that number's already been processed by your payroll provider, so you should be able to get that number from them. I know personally for our firm, we had to sign a piece of paper with Ceridian, with our payroll provider, to acknowledging that amount. So I know what that amount would be, and I'd put that in the box.
That's exactly right. And you want to make sure it's a negative number. If you put, as you can see, so 6,000 minus 900, 544. If you put a positive number, you're actually you're increasing your net wage subsidy, and it highlights here that it's something to look into. That is because it should not increase your wage benefit. CRA has been clear that the 10% reduces the 75%. So that's where we get this number. So this spreadsheet is all done. So when we're done with this spreadsheet, that's not quite everything that you need to do. The next thing that we're going to do is on CRA's website. On CRA, there is a Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy page.
And this was just set up maybe 3 or 4 days ago. So it's a new website. And this is where you actually put in your numbers, your actual 75%.
Exactly. So on this is just the very first page when you find, when you get here. You can search Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, and then it'll on Google, and you can find this page. So this is the very beginning of the page, or you can even copy the link above. From here, sorry, I'm just noticing.
Oh, that's just me.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay. So from here, this is just the opening page. It has information and everything regarding this the wage subsidy. So it talks about who the eligible employer is, determining who your employees, but we're going to focus on just getting into the wage subsidy here. So if you click this, sorry, I just want to make sure everybody knows your questions, if they show up, are going to be shown to, I guess, the rest of the chat. So I guess keep that in mind when you're asking your questions.
We did have a question asked privately. Do we want to answer that now?
If the individual is okay with it, I suppose. I think it should be okay. So if staff are getting CERB benefits right now, would you recommend bringing them back on this payment schedule so their pay does not conflict with previous CERB payments?
I'll get to that at the end because it's a bigger question of cash outflows. So okay, thank you.
Perfect. Okay. So we're on this calculate your subsidy amount page. It talks about like kind of the math behind it, and you can take a look there as well. This is all in like the spreadsheets. So as we scroll down, it's going to talk about things that you actually need to enter. Now it's important to go to this page once you've completed the other spreadsheet, because this page will create for you a PDF worksheet that you're going to use when you apply on April 27th, when the benefit actually rolls out for application. So first you need to select your claim period, and in this case we're going to do March 15th to April 11th, and then we're going to look at that. We're going to continue scrolling down. So here is a CRA version of the same spreadsheet that we have here. I've looked at both of them, and they're virtually the same spreadsheet. We don't think that the CRA is going to care between the two.
No, they don't care how you calculate it as long as it's correct and you save it for your records. So when they do, or if they do come audit you, you have all the records and you can verify how you came to the calculation.
Exactly. So you can download the spreadsheet if you like. You do not have to. What we can do from here is we need to input the values from the spreadsheet. So the total number of eligible employees. So I'm going to put this on the side here so that I can follow along. In this case, sorry, we're down here. Total number of employees. We're going to put 3. Total eligible remuneration paid. We're going to put in our total remuneration. At the top here, it says the total. So we've got 23, or sorry, not this one. We're only looking at it should be the sum of all the weeks. So in this case, we're going to put this plus this one plus this. That one is only the employees. So in this case, we need to get all of the cells. So we need this one, this one, this one, and this one. So we can see at the bottom, I've just collected
8288
at the bottom here.
Oh wait, yeah, I've written it down. So
perfect. 8288.08. And then it says total basic dues for this employee.
I think you just get rid of the dot there.
Yes, you are correct. Yeah. Okay. So now we can go here, and it asks you for the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy. So we want this gross amount here. We want that amount because it's going to later ask us about the 10%.
Okay.
So we want 6342 here. So that's good. So we've entered that information in, and it's going to continue on to ask about furloughed employees, which in this case we don't have any, but you do want to make sure that the total EI that you paid on salary to eligible employees is included in this box. And then the CPP, the same thing, would be included in this box.
So once again, that's for employees that you've laid off that are not working, but you've decided to pay them.
That's right, exactly. So we don't have any of those, so we are going to make sure that these are 0. So if you don't have any, you have to make sure you enter something in. And in this case, we're entering in 0. Like it's important to note that this is specifically asking about furloughed employees. It's not how much you totally paid. It's only talking about when it says eligible employees, it's talking about the employees that were furloughed.
Yeah. Now, one of the questions we've been asking, and I'll answer towards the end as well. If the employee makes less than the 847, why don't we bring them back as furlonged and then have the CRA pay, or the government of Canada pay 100% of their wages? It doesn't quite work like that, so we will answer that question at the end.
Okay, and then number 4, as we scroll down, it says the amount that you're eligible to claim under the 10% temporary wage subsidy for employers. Now that's why it's important to know what this number is. You're going to want to make sure you enter in that number as a positive number into here. And then this one is regarding the work sharing benefits, the EI benefits they would have received.
So that's if you have anyone on the work sharing program.
That's right.
And you will know that because that program is quite entailed. It would have required sign off by the employer and the employees that are sharing the job position. So for 99% of you, it's going to be 0. For the people that it won't be, you know who you are because you've gone through a very lengthy process to join the work sharing program. Mm-hmm. So in most cases, it's always going to be 0.
All right, so now we have those deductions in and we can finally get our results. This button here under number 5 is going to show you what your wage subsidy is. So if you click it, it's going to show you this worksheet. And it says even at the top, you will need the amounts below when you apply for CEWS beginning April 27th. Print and keep this record. You will need these line amounts when you complete your online application. So we can literally just do this, and it's going to give you a print preview of what you will need to print. So we can print this, and you can save it as a PDF to a file and a location that you remember and will need, like obviously, to retain your record. I'm not going to print it, but just keep in mind that this is important for when you apply.
Okay, so if you did this process on the weekend or today, for example, you will have this information in front of you. So on April 27th, you can enter that into the CRA website that's going to be set up. And we don't have access to it right now, so we don't know what it will look like. But this is the only information you need for CRA. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, this is everything that you're going to need, along with just keeping everything else as support on hand. Other than that, that's how this is going to go starting April 27th.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Eric, for that. Mm-hmm. A few things I just want to recap on. I think that you said it's really important. While I recap, please feel free to ask any questions. If you want them to be private, send them directly to John. That way they won't pop up on the screen, on our screen share. A couple things I do want to highlight. One is that you need to keep the calculations for your records. So though it's an arduous process, please do it. If you have any questions, we actually have Eric will be the person at the firm who's going to deal with all the calculations, whether review your calculations if you feel you want review, or actually do them for you. And Eric will put up his email address on his screen while I talk. So second is, if you don't get this done by April, this weekend or by April 27th, not to fear. You can submit at any time. In fact, you can submit up to October for the periods. So there's no rush to submit on the 27th. And it's sort of they're saying it's not a first come first serve sort of thing, but there will be a backlog to process. CRA, the government has indicated that they're going to process everyone and only audit the really big companies before they provide the refund. So most of you, and what's the definition of a big company? Who knows? A couple thousand employees, I suppose. If these benefits are in the millions or tens of millions, I suppose they'll be auditing those ones. But for most owner-managed business, where these refunds aren't in the millions, they should come, relatively automatically. Your company should be set up with automatic deposits so that the amounts are deposited directly into your bank accounts. Okay, I want to answer the first question that came a little earlier about the CERB benefits. The comment was, if I've laid people off, I'm not paying them, so they're not technically called furlonged, and they're earning the $2,000 a month. Should I bring them back on? Well, the answer is this. In almost all circumstances, when you run through the calculations, and Eric and I, we actually figured out a circumstance where you can get 100% of the employee's salary is paid for by the government, and so you're actually out of cash nothing. I guess in those cases, it would make sense. But in 99% of the cases, if you take them off CERB, off that $2,000, you bring them back on and you pay them, you will have some permanent cash outflow. You will have money out of your bank account that will not be reimbursed. So the question becomes is, can the company afford that cash? So it's really an individual thing based on the company's cash position. And where it makes sense where the government will pay 100% is the circumstance, and only in this circumstance. One is the employee pay during the qualifying period, so from 1 January till 15 March, was in excess, the average was in excess of the $847. And when you brought them back, their pay was at least 25% less than what they were paid previously. So that means they agreed to take a 25% reduction in their weekly pay. So the actual number is, if they were making at least $1,000 on average a week during the pre-crisis qualifying period, and they were willing to come back and work and get paid for $750, then when you fill out the worksheet, the way the calculations work, their pre-crisis employment is greater than the amount, therefore that you will get 100% reimbursed. Now, I need to caution you that any reduction in someone's wage, it could be deemed constructive dismissal. Eric's not a HR lawyer, so that's our caveat. You need to talk to your HR lawyer if you bring someone back and you reduce their pay. There is some significant risk there that you're exposing your company to. So you need to be careful with that. But if you can get that all done, then certainly there is a circumstance in a very minute case where 100% of the payments would be paid for by the government. And then I suppose if it's in excess of the CERB, why not? But so if there's cash out of the company, you have to determine if your company can handle that cash outflow, whatever it may be. It may only be $200 per person per week, but you need to determine, can you afford that? If you can, and the payments are in excess of their CERB and they're willing to work, why not? So that's a long way to answer that question.
Definitely.
Are there any other questions while I talked?
There was. This question from this individual seems somewhat specific and probably should be asked by a lawyer. Or if you would like, probably send us an email. This one, this one might be a little bit too specific.
Okay. It was a question around where the layoffs extend to 120 days. In Alberta, they were. Yeah. 100%. I did pay everyone a minimum of a week. Okay, so yeah, the layoff periods were extended to 120 days in Alberta. Of course, all employment legislation is done at the provincial level, so every province is a little different. And these pay benefits are federally, so you have to kind of balance the provincial legislation with the federal legislation. Are there any other questions?
It doesn't look like we received any other questions.
Okay. Well, the only other thing I think we might want to mention is this morning, and we weren't able to get into the deep details on it, was the Prime Minister announced, Mr. Trudeau announced some rent subsidies for landlords. So that's hot off the press. Of course, like this wage subsidy, which was announced almost 3 weeks ago, the details aren't out yet. And as we see in this wage subsidy, the devil is in the details.
Definitely.
So I guess we're going to have to read up, see what the details are, but it looks like it's going to be a shared rent subsidy that the tenant will have to eat up about 25%. The landlord will have to eat up 25%. The other 50% of the lease payment is going to be shared equally by the federal government and the provincial government. So if you could imagine all those moving parts, and from what we understand, it's going to be managed by the Canadian Mortgage Corporation. So there's a lot of moving parts, at least 5 different stakeholders. So I suspect the details will take a few weeks to come out, and it's probably not worth a detailed discussion on that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we're going to leave it at that. If there's no other questions, I just want to reiterate a few things. You don't have to rush to fill out on the 27th, but if you have your information and you fill out the paperwork with CRA on the 27th of April, you should be in queue to get payments very shortly thereafter, May 4th, potentially as early as May 10th. It will be automatic deposits into your account. If you have any questions about this, please email Eric. Eric has shared his email with you. He is our point of contact at the firm to either double check your calculations or do your calculations. He will, of course, need information from you and your payroll provider. As you can see, the Excel is the process, though not horribly daunting, is detailed, and it's prone to some easy mistakes. And the last thing is that whoever submits on the 27th should, if you're the owner of the business, delegating down to a junior staff member who may not be as good with numbers is risky, because there's an attestation that you yourself as the business owner or the executive is responsible for those calculations. So make sure you look at them. If you have any questions, please send them to us. We'll be more than happy to take a look and make sure that they're right. Okay.
All right.
Anything I'm missing, Eric?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, great. This is recorded. It'll be on our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, just please watch that. Have a great weekend. It's nice out. Enjoy the fresh air. Take care. Be safe.
All right. See you guys.